Welcome, listeners. I am so happy that you're with me today. I have Mark Astor. He is an attorney in Florida, and he's really unique in that I think, Mark, you tell me if I'm wrong. I think you're the only law firm in the US that focuses on mental health and addiction. And what a need you must be feeling. What were you going to say? Did I get that wrong?
Well, I was gonna agree with you actually, but you did said it so nicely, I felt like I should just keep quiet, which for a lawyer is not so easy to do.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you're here. And I think for my listeners, I think everyone is just going to be really curious as to what led you down this path because I'm sure it wasn't easy. I'm sure when you started out, it was kind of hard to get things going. And I think people want to know what kinds of things how do you represent people? Because all of us have dealt with someone in our lives or ourselves who have had an issue with mental illness or addiction. And so I think your message is going to just ring out for everyone. I mean, not just, you know what I mean? Not just people going through divorce, not just people going through, whatever diagnosis, but, people in general have this issue.
Yeah, it's been a journey for me, it really has, and this is my 31st year of practice. I've been doing this for the last 10 years. I opened up the practice in February of 2016, and I actually started the practice out of the local library here in Boca. I had no money. I was pretty much, well, not pretty much. I was flat broke, but I had an idea, and they had free Wi-Fi, and they had a little coffee shop with half decent coffee. It seemed like a good place to start a law firm. But um, prior to that, so my legal career, the first 5 years, I was a prosecutor here in Palm Beach County. Um, putting bad people, some of them in prison for a long time. But one of the things I noticed very early on, really the first year I was a prosecutor was kept seeing the same faces over and over again. And I said, well, there's something not right here. What's the problem? And what I realized was these were people who are dealing with issues with, substance related, mental health related. And back in the early 90s, when I was prosecutor, we simply didn't have any other avenue through the criminal system to get these people help. Now we have different courts, in the criminal system, like mental health court, drug court, veterans court, that are really designed to get people out of the criminal system and get them some help so they don't continue to come back. Because the mandate, even now, here in Florida, and has been as long as I've been around, is to punish first and rehabilitate second if you end up in the criminal system. So I was there for 5 years. I did a lot of defense work after that. I got married and divorced. I took a year off, spent a year in DC. I went back to school in '04 to get a master's degree in law. I also worked on a presidential campaign for a year. Um, I came back to Florida because the candidate I worked for didn't win, and a job. I was hoping to get a job out of that, but I didn't. I spent a couple more years back in Florida. I'll be honest with you, there was a time in my life where I was really quite miserable. I loved being a prosecutor, not because I liked putting people away, but because it gave me a lot of personal satisfaction. When you have a case where there's a victim of a violent felony, or you have the family of a decedent, where it's a murder case, and you get them some closure. It's for me personally, I found it very satisfying. It didn't pay very well. But the first, I think, 2 or 3 years, I lived at home with my parents after I got out of law school because they just don't pay you well. But it was a fabulous place to get a lot of training and skills, and I missed that personal satisfaction. So in about 15 years ago, I left with what I had after the '08 crashed. I went to California for 3 years, where I basically spent 3 years tripping the light fantastic out there. I took the bar out there twice. I failed it twice. I came back after 3 years because I was pretty much tapped out. I took it a third time and failed it a third time. And I got within a percentage point the third time of passing it. But so that was a bit of a kick to the ego because I think I studied
Mhm.
Florida bar for about 3 weeks, and I spent a year studying for the California bar and couldn't pass.
Ooh.
And meanwhile, friends and family were telling me, "You're supposed to be in Florida. You're not listening to the universe. Yeah, open up your ears." And then I met somebody that basically changed the path of my life. So I met a guy, his name is R. John Robbins. R. John Robbins runs a company in Miami called How to Manage a Small Law Firm. And they teach lawyers the business side of being a lawyer, which is not something they teach you in any law school anywhere in the country. But at the very core of how to manage, they are a personal growth company for lawyers. Can you believe that? Personal growth for lawyers. And God,
Wow.
we need it. And I saw him present to a group of lawyers about being an entrepreneurial lawyer. And after seeing him speak, I begged him for a job because I wasn't, I was unemployed when I came
Yeah.
back. Um, and I spent a year working for him, learned about the business side of being an entrepreneurial lawyer. But it was also a year for me to really grow up and put my big boy pants on and take 100% responsibility for my crappy life, right? That was why I had no money in the bank, nothing going on professionally, nothing going on personally. And I took responsibility for it. And when I really thought about it, I realized I had close family members and friends who had issues primarily related to drugs, but some with mental illness. And I said, okay, that's who I'm going to help. And I didn't know how I was going to do it. I didn't have a business plan, but I sat myself down in the library and just I compiled an Excel spreadsheet of all the people that I had ever had contact with. And I just started, smiling and dialing and making contact with people. I had read about the Marchman Act, which is a statute unique to Florida, which we still use to this day in the office, which is designed to give a family the ability, the legal authority to place somebody into treatment for chunks of 90 days where there is a primary substance use disorder. Now, at the time, there were only two lawyers who were using the Marchman Act. One was south of me, and he sued nursing homes, and one was north of me, and he was a family lawyer. And the guy south didn't go north, the guy north didn't go south. They kept it quiet, they made lots of money, and then I came along and spoiled the party for them. I started talking about it on social media. Well, the guy down south got wind of this because it was affecting his bottom line, and he went and registered the fictitious thing to my website and sent me a nasty email threatening to shut me down. And I said, okay, bring it on. Show me what you got. And anyway, long story short is after I kicked his ass around the courtroom several times, he decided he'd just rather hate me as opposed to trying to shut me down. But the first year I took different kinds of cases just to pay the bills. I was able to get a very small office, which we still have actually here in Boca, which was just a tiny bit bigger than the desk that was sitting in it, but it was an office and it was a real place to plant my flag. And the first 11 months in, I lost my dad. So that was a really trying time. And I wasn't exactly rolling in the dough. So scrapping together the money to bury him was not a, was just, it was a difficult time for me. I was trying to grow the business. I lost my dad. And there was, see some fallout in the family because it affected everybody. And he'd been sick for a long time too. So, um, trying times, but, I persevered. I met my now wife. She's my law partner, but we got married 18 months ago. I met her the second year that I had the practice. She also had a small office in the same building that we're in now. And, she had a tremendous background in guardianship, which traditionally has been used for elderly people. My wife being the brilliant lawyer that she is, far more brilliant than me, if I can even call myself brilliant. She came up with a creative idea that we could use guardianship, a statute for elderly people, to help families who had loved ones with substance use and mental health issues. And it would give them far more control of what is a completely out of control situation. And we worked together for 7 years, um, got married 18 months ago. And the first 7 years, it was just the two of us doing everything, the sales, the marketing, meeting with the clients, doing all the drafting, running to court. I mean, we worked 8 days a week and 25 hours a day for 7 years. Fortunately, the last 2 years, we've been able to build a team. So there's now, I think, 12 of us, which means I
Wow.
sit here and talk to you for as long as you want to talk to me. I- In a rule, my phone shouldn't ring, although I did put it on silent. But it's enabled us to really change the dynamics and give a really great experience for our clients. And every year, the business has grown significantly. Um, COVID, two things really changed the dynamics of the cases that we handle and how we handle them. COVID and the legalization of marijuana. So COVID came along and people who had not had issues started to have issues. People that were in recovery started to relapse. They couldn't get in to see their clinicians and their psychiatrists and psychologists. They started calling 911 and 211 and showing up at hospitals, showing up at Baker Act receiving facilities, which is a state facility for mental health crises. And they started getting sucked into Florida's mental health system and couldn't get out. And I started getting all those calls. Now, 8 years ago, was it six? No, 6 years ago, 5 years ago, when we started getting those calls, just about every lawyer that I'd ever spoken to said, if you get Baker acted, which is our state involuntary commitment statute, you can't get out. And I'm somewhat creative when it comes to those type of things. And Fast forward now, I'm probably I'd like to say we are the leader in Baker Act defense work. I'm certainly probably the state's leading expert on that issue because it happened to my family member too, just a couple of days after my father passed. So we have a whole, half of the practice now that helps to get people out of Florida's broken mental health system and into a facility of their own choice where they can get clinically appropriate treatment. But we also take calls now from all over the country. Far west is Hawaii, that Northeast corridor, New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, that area, occasionally outside of the country. And they come to us because they have a loved one who's got a long standing history of drug issues and mental illness. And they're sick and tired of being sick and tired. And they say, hey, can you fix this? And the answer to that is yes, but it takes time because your family member's been sick for a long time. It's going to take a little time to get them well. And so I have clinicians, I have a whole team of private investigators. There's 4 lawyers in the office, case managers, paralegals. I mean, I built a whole team around doing one thing and one thing only, which is to save families whose loved ones are suffering from substance use, mental health disorders, and failed attempts at recovery. And that's what we do. That's all we've done. And so, yeah, there are other law firms sort of, nipping at my heels, trying to do the same thing. But this is all that we do. I don't take any other kind of case. If you call me about a car accident, I'll refer you out. If you want to get divorced, I'm referring you out. We don't do that kind of work. I do one thing. That's it. That's our mission.
Wow, there's, like, so much, and I didn't even take notes because I was so into your story. You really do. You have a journey. And,
Yes.
Mark, when I think a lot of people think, "Oh, attorneys, they're just loaded, criminals." And you share it's a struggle, especially when you're on your own. And so I love the hearing how I wish I could have talked to the man that you worked for, years ago to help me as an entrepreneur get a law practice, you know what I mean? Get that going. Because it sounds like you just really found your niche, and you're just like
He- Here's
killing it.
what here's what saved me. Finding a bunch of people that needed help and going out there and helping them. Finding a mission, a purpose, a reason to get out of bed every morning. That's what saved me. And by building a business that saves other families, I saved my own, right? I was able to build a business so I could take care of my mom after my father
Yeah.
passed. I met my wife. I have 2 amazing stepchildren. I've hired a dozen, we have 12 staff members. Now they get to live a great life, right? And so by finding a purpose, I saved myself. That's
Yeah.
it. Really
Yeah.
nothing to it. People say, "Oh, you're an overnight success." Well, maybe, but it took me 10 years to get there.
Exactly. It
I
exactly.
still hustle every single day.
Yeah. Yeah. Good for you. That's an amazing, amazing story. And then all these things started coming into my mind as I'm thinking through people I know who are going through things, even with I know it's always hard when like a kiddo turns 18. I had a really good friend they didn't realize her daughter had mental illness and they didn't realize it until she turned 18. And so there was no way that she could make her get help.
What
With
triggered them to realize she had a problem?
She had issues in high school, and I think she was kind of an older senior. You know what I mean? Like her birthday was so that she was 18 as a senior. And so I think it was the trouble in school that finally got them looking. But okay, so I'm right now in my barn in Wisconsin. I always practiced in Minnesota. I don't know about good things happening to people and I don't hear about them getting help. I hear about them, I've got another family, love them dearly. Have a beautiful son who's the father of 3 girls and he's got issues, with addiction and with the law and it just keeps going. You know what I mean? It's just like he gets put in jail, then he gets out. And then here's another thing, Mark. Tell me if I'm crazy, but so he gets a DUI, so they take away his license. Okay, like I get that. Like you don't want anyone to get hurt, but then he's got to work and he has no way to get there. And so you have to have someone that's willing to drive you. Is that normal? And how can you help people in all these other states if you're just in Florida?
Okay, there's a couple of issues there. So let's talk about as if that a DUI was in Florida. It's been a while since I handled a DUI case, although I used to file them when I was prosecutor. But generally, as a general rule, as long as no one's been seriously injured and it's the first DUI. In Florida, you're probably going to be entitled to get some kind of work permit, which means you can drive to work. You can't drive socially, but you can go to work. If it's a second DUI, again, depending on when the first one was and if there was an accident and things of that nature, maybe, maybe not. So that's the first thing. So here in Florida, we're reasonably proactive with that stuff. But if you get enough of these things, that they will lock
That's
you.
that's what happened. He's had enough of these things, and so
Yeah.
I think he did have a work permit at first, and now no.
So that's the DUI. The second one is how do we help people? So I will tell you, my wife and I are both barred in Massachusetts, so we can take cases up there. But most of our clients are mums and dads, typically mums and dads, not always, but most of the time. They call us from somewhere else other than Florida. And their loved one is either here in Florida, coming here, or we need to get them here. And there's a number of ways that we can do that. Um, Sometimes we like to give somebody a vacation in Florida and then when I can grab them. Um, but the laws down here in Florida, I think, are probably the best in the country when it comes to dealing with issues related to substance use and mental illness. And again, it does vary by county. You know, that the old joke is the further north you go in Florida, the further south you've got. So there are some counties here in Florida that are just a little bit more switched on to this stuff than others. And there are some counties where I may file one case but not another, just because I know that the resources are just not good enough in that county to support us filing a case and getting a great result for the client. But as a general rule, we've got somebody here. We need them here because otherwise the court in Florida does not have jurisdiction over them. And they don't have to be a resident of Florida. I mean, they don't even have to be a citizen. As long as like they are physically in Florida, that will give the court, depending which county they're in, the jurisdiction to take effect and to be able to give us some relief over that person. So
Okay, so tell me about that. So give you relief. Okay, so say this mom calls you about her. I mean, he's like in his 30s, right? And still just going through the same thing. Okay, so she has to get him to Florida so that he can find the help in that. How can we start doing this in other states? Do you feel like you just want to spread this across the US?
um, we're working on that bit. We are. So the statute that we love to use, and I know I talked about guardianship before, because every state has some form of guardianship. And I think that if there are other law firms out there that want to do this, I mean, we'd certainly be willing to talk to them and partner with them about how they could use guardianship. But it's not just a matter of getting the court order; it's the resources that are also available down here.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Florida's always been known for treatment, as California, and I think Texas and maybe Tennessee as well. But we had a task force down here, especially in Palm Beach County, that did an amazing job, led by our former state attorney, Dave Ehrenberg, of cleaning up the industry. I mean, they went around and arrested people who were doing all these nefarious things. So Florida has great treatment. We have really tough law enforcement keeping an eye on these facilities, and it's a really great place to come and get well. And we have the laws that enable you to basically grab somebody and take control of them. And so that we can empower the families to start making decisions for their loved one. Because when somebody is sick with with a behavioral health issue, it's as if their brain has been kidnapped. And so expecting them, hoping that they can, or asking them to make a decision to save themselves, it sounds like a reasonable request, but in their mind, there's nothing wrong with them. In fact, not only is there nothing wrong with them, there's something wrong with everybody else in the family that they keep asking them to go and get help. That's how that's how sick they are. And I use that word sort of somewhat broadly because it may look like them, sound like them, walk like them, but it's not them, right? The behavioral health issue is running the show. And here in Florida, I think one of the worst things that we did was we made marijuana available, and it's not supposed to be recreational, but for all intents and purposes, it is.
Mhm.
And that has been an unmitigated disaster. It really has. And I didn't think it would be because as a child of the 80s growing up in England, I had a number of friends that used marijuana, but it has really poured gasoline on a mental health fire. And so if there's any predisposition for mental illness and your loved one's using marijuana, buckle up. It's going to be a wild ride.
Okay, and that's why I'm like, "Oh my gosh, just stay away from it. Just stay." And Mark, you're hitting on something where I feel a little bit alone on how I feel about marijuana. And, like, I'm fine if there's, like, I don't know, a doctor that needs you, but it is so popular. I mean, it's like my hubby goes golfing with his buddies and they're chewing gummy. You know, people use it to go to sleep at night, and then we wonder why people are breaking down and having mental illness, and then I've heard about now this is out totally out of my realm. I'm just talking as a wife and a mama, and a grandma, and just what I feel inside about it. It just doesn't feel right, but alcohol's kind of nasty too. Like I think about when I raised my babies, it was a thing of I'm a better mom when I have a glass of wine. Well, that can come back and shoot you in the foot because that's not good either. But I think I have heard, and you're more of the expert on this than me, that for someone who like may have schizophrenia in their family history, if they start using marijuana and they're younger, it's gonna make it happen where it may not have happened if they didn't. Is that true? I mean, that's really unscientific.
And I'll give you an unscientific, answer, which is, yeah. I mean, based on what we see, that, if there's any predisposition for mental health issues, um, a little marijuana just goes a long, long way into really making things combustible. I mean, when we get a call, it's very obvious to us pretty early in the call when we speak to parents, there's marijuana involved because there's typically, paranoia and delusions associated with it. When they start telling me that their loved one thinks that the FBI is spying on them through the computer, you know, which may or may not be true these days, but the point,
Right.
yeah, the point, they're probably more likely to be spying on me than somebody else. But in any event, the point is, those are sort of indicators of that something's not right. And I think part of the problem is that if the parents are around, I'll speak for myself, my age, and I'm 58,
Mhm.
right? Because like me, they were a child of the 80s, they probably don't think it's that big of a deal. It wasn't back in the 80s. Although I had some friends who never really got back.
Well, it was to me, and I'm 57.
No, but right. Um,
Maybe it was different in the UK, I don't know. Um, but what's scary to me, like what you're saying, is that I see a lot of people my age and younger, and everybody thinks it's okay. It's in the drinks that they drink. And then they don't think it's such a big deal if they're kids. You know what I mean? And then they have it in the home probably, so then their kids can get it and go ahead.
I think part of the problem is that the people say, well, it's legal, or they have a card, so it's safe. No, no. I respectfully disagree with anybody who says that. It is not safe. And just because it's legal, it's like, last year I had surgery twice on my arm. I had to get it repaired. I tore up the tendon of my left arm, elbow. And both times the doctor, after I had the surgery, said to me, "Oh, I'm going to prescribe you Oxycontin." I said, "I'm not taking it. It's going down the toilet." He said, "You'll be in pain." I said, "I'd rather be in pain than take those because I know what those can do to you. They're
Yeah.
addictive and they're dangerous." So I didn't take them. He gave me the prescription. I filled it and flushed it down the toilet both
Yeah.
times. Um, so I'm not taking that stuff. I mean, just because it's prescribed or because it's legal doesn't mean it's safe.
Right.
Can't be abused. Now, are there medicinal purposes for it? Yeah, I mean, I believe that there are. I mean, somebody who's got terminal cancer, who's in
Right.
significant pain, I think it could be useful for those purposes. But I think if you're a young person, I'm wondering why you need it. You
Well,
know,
and Mark, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I think probably it was about maybe 15 years ago, I had to get my appendix taken out. It was simple. I didn't even think it was that bad, right? And they were like, "Oh, you have to" I'm like, "I don't have any pain. You have to stay on top of it." I never had pain. I never took it. I think they made me in the hospital, and then I never took it. And it's like, why are they pushing that? Why are they pushing me to take it when I don't have pain, to stay on top of it? If it gets bad, I'll take something, right? But I so agree with that too, and that's such a problem in our country. And what is that all about?
it's funny. My brother is a doctor.
My
He
daughter is.
works at a hospital. Okay.
Yeah.
Before that, he was a naturopath, and what he told me was the hardest part of medical school: learning all the different medications that they've been told to prescribe. And I have a brother-in-law who's also he's in private practice, and he would get inundated, like day after day after day with these really beautiful pharmaceutical reps coming in. And I know that because when I was single, he was setting me up on dates. Right. And this is what we're pushing, right? We're pushing medication. We're teaching our doctors to prescribe medication. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't prescribe medications. There's a time and a place, but I mean, it seems like that is a very big part of our healthcare, if you can even call it healthcare at this point.
Right. Okay, now
So
I'm gonna dive off on a tangent that I never expected to get on
that's fine.
today. But so part of my journey was I had stage 1 breast cancer, and
Right.
it was just like a year ago or a little over a year ago. And it was all good because it was teeny tiny, but I had to go through chemo and radiation because of the type that it was. Still 98% good outcome, so don't look sad. I'm gonna be fine, but it was hard. It was really, really hard for me. And it was interesting because I was we have, the Mayo Clinic, which I love, Rochester in Minnesota, and we go there often because those doctors are different. They are kinda based on a salary, and it just seems like the care is a little bit different. But I ended up going to a teaching hospital for my care, which I never thought that I would. But it was really interesting because my oncologist told me, "Oh, yeah, ice your hands and feet so you don't get neuropathy." Do you know you go in there to get your stupid chemo and no one's doing it? No one's icing their hands and feet because you can't make any money off of ice. So doctors don't even know or won't even stand by, or there hasn't been a study done because who's going to study ice? I don't have neuropathy, and neither does anyone that I know who went through chemo and used ice. Now, you can't always. If it's a cancer that they're concerned about, I also did cold capping to save my hair, and my doctor was supportive. Where I went to a I thought I was going to use a different doctor that was more of corporate medicine. And she was like, "Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Why bother? It's probably not going to work." And, I just had such a different experience that I did love that teaching hospital, but we have to be such proponent of our own health, and it's hard. When you're sick, you just wanna find someone and trust them, you know?
Can I ask you a couple of questions? Do you mind?
Yes.
When you got diagnosed, how'd that affect your family?
Um, okay, so this is what I'm gonna say. It all turned out to be a huge blessing for me, kinda like I needed it in a weird way to realize, how I wanted to live a little bit different. I think that I feel like I am someone that is always telling everyone I'm gonna be okay. And this was a time, especially like I think about my son, where I would break down and like, "I don't know if I'm gonna keep my nipple." He's like, "What?" I don't wanna hear this. But you know what I mean? He's not even 30. And I've always made everything really nice for everybody and just tried to keep everybody happy. And it was the first time in my life where I was me. And I did surrender. I did surrender to God. I've always had a strong Christian background, but this was a moment where it was, you're all alone. I know you've got like support, but you're alone because it's you and you're kind of facing death. Like I had never really thought about it. I stay so healthy because I never want to have an issue. So I was like blown away. I don't have it in my family. I don't, I was like, my parents are in their 80s. I was just like dumbfounded that I could get this.
And what about your husband? I mean, was he stressed out? I mean, was he scared? Was your son? I mean, how did they respond? Were they? I mean, were they?
Well, so okay, so my daughter's a doctor, and here's the interesting thing. Her husband's mom passed away from breast cancer shortly before he turned 16. So he was a little wigged out. However, they were all like, "Mom, you're a great example of going in and getting your mammogram and catching it early." And even this doctor that I had was like, "I think you're going to handle chemo really well." I never got sick. Like, I walked through it all. I didn't get sick through chemo.
It's amazing.
And now I'm not gonna say I have a podcast on this, it's called Saddle Up Live, where I just talk about how to get through chemo. I no caffeine, no alcohol, no sugar. I, like, really, really took care of myself.
Alkalines your body.
Say that again?
Alkalines your body
Yeah.
so that the cancer couldn't spread. Smart.
Well, and it was cute because 'cause I've always used, like, a functional assessment doctor, and I talked to her, and she supported even though the doctors were like, "We probably got it all with the surgery. This is how we treat this HER2 type." And, my natural path or whatever functional assessment doctor told me, because my one of my doctors had said, "Oh, don't worry about what you're eating right now. Just get through chemo." And so I started and I was like eating gluten-free bagels, things I had never eaten because I'm like, wow, what the hell? I've got. And then a light bulb went on and I went, what am I doing? And what was described to me is that if you do have any cancer in you, you want it to go eat the chemo. And if you're feeding it sugar, it's not going to be hungry for the chemo. So I really I kind of did some intermittent fasting through it. I exercised, I lifted weight through the whole thing. And I had to start out with soup cans. It was quite the journey, and sometimes it's funny, Mark, I feel like I got off easy because I could get teary. I have a good friend who had this the same time as I did, and we thought she was gonna kinda be following in my footsteps, and it had metastasized, and she didn't get to have the treatment because it was not going to work, and so it was too far, so and they still have gotten so far with breast cancer, even at stage 4, a lot of women are living a long time. So, I mean, that's the good news. My husband okay, here's the funny thing, there were, like, other things going on at the same time, of course, as this in my marriage, which was hard, and, I will say this, I would get so mad at him because I kinda didn't want anyone to know, and that was part of, I'm a people pleaser, and I want everyone to think she's got it all together, and no one wants to be the woman with breast cancer, right? And he would go like, he'd bring our dog to the vet, and he'd tell the vet and everyone there about what I was going through, and I could have killed him. And then everywhere he went, he would talk to people about my cancer, and I'm like, I don't want everyone to know, and he didn't realize that, and so we handled it different. And it's
He was having his own little crisis.
oh my gosh, and it's been such a change because I have shifted who I am. I'm like, "I'm not here to make you happy, honey. I love you, but you gotta make yourself" you know what I mean? So this poor guy, we've been married 34 years. He's awesome. But this guy now is learning how to live with a new Lisa, but I stay open about it, that he can't like, he used to be able to say, "Oh, I really love a clean floor," and I'd go grab the mop and start you know what I mean? Because that was just how it was. Now I go, "Yeah, no. Do you wanna mop the floor?" It's it's just funny, I've just learned so much. I've done some NLP work, I mean, I have gone deep. I'm writing a book, so
You good. What an incredible woman you are.
oh, well, you're sweet, thank you. I
I
did not mean to get off on that
no,
tangent.
right. The reason I ask that I ask this is because there's when it comes to dealing with substance use, these behavioral health issues, it's really no different from sort of the mental health perspective. I mean, listen, here's you in the middle of this, right? You're doing an amazing job dealing with it, and your husband, on the other hand, who is sort of the patriarch of the family, he's having a bit of a meltdown to the point where he has to discuss it with everybody because he just needs a little support. He wants someone to tell him it's going to be okay and that you're going to be fine. And so those are the kinds of this is what we deal with on a daily basis. When a family calls us, it's as if your husband, a version of your husband, calls us every day, multiple times a
Okay,
day.
that's
We're
so
called a
yeah,
person in crisis, and it's not the patient, it's the family that's in
yeah,
this because the person in the middle is like, I'm fine. I got it.
yeah,
You obviously were thinking rationally, but when somebody's dealing with mental illness, they're not thinking rationally. They're thinking there's absolutely nothing wrong with them and they don't need any treatment. But it's everybody else in the family, the mums, the dads, the siblings, brothers, sisters, grand,
mhm,
who are completely losing it because they don't understand why their loved one cannot see what they're seeing and why they cannot change things. And it's because they don't understand the dynamics of dealing with somebody like this who is so sick that they don't even know that they're sick. That's how sick they are. They can't look in the mirror and see that they're wrong.
Yes.
And that is what we deal with. So the reason
That
I
is Mark,
not to
that's
Rosie, but I wanted you to understand we get people like your husband calling every day, 2, 3 times a day, saying, "We have this family member. They're really, really sick, and we don't know what to do because they won't do the chemo because they don't think they have cancer."
oh, geez. Okay, so, Mark, this is so interesting, and I kinda feel, like, a little embarrassed, and I this would be
Okay.
one of the no, listen, I don't think interestingly enough, I don't know that I've ever really sat back and thought, "How did this affect my family?" Now, I knew that it was so it is a little hard because it's, like, 98% positive outcome, you know what I mean? It's not like it wasn't really like I was gonna die ever, but there was a moment when I didn't know, and there was time when I didn't know, and honestly, I do think it was a time where I broke down and was open with my family and didn't try to cover up how I felt. But they don't know everything, you know, they don't know mama going out in the barn and just crying on a hay bale. I mean, that's where I would go because you find out you have it, and then I thought it was huge because they didn't tell me they blew it up on the I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is it." And then you go back in and then you start learning more, and then you have the surgery and they're like, "It looks like it's teeny tiny and, like, we got it, but you gotta do the test." We don't know anything for I don't know how it's like, takes weeks, you know what I mean? And you just sit in the not knowing, and I think that was really hard and very life-changing for me. And if you knew me, you would know I worry, and I worry about health stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's the unknown, and, to a certain extent, right, you took a leap of faith with your doctor, so when families hire us, it's the same thing. They take a little bit of a leap of faith with us that we could finally end this nightmare. But they're trusting us not only to do the legal work, but is the facility we're working with, are they going to do a good job? Is the caseworker that the family hired to work with us, are those people going to do a good job? Right. I mean, all of these things, and it's all these pieces that work together, right? I mean, you had somebody telling you about nutrition, and there's the doctor telling you to do the ice therapy, and there's the oncologist, so you've got all these people around you, and it really requires all of them to do the best job they can. But at some point, the family has to take a little bit of a leap of faith and say, you know what, I'm going to trust, I'm going to trust Mark and his team to do the right thing and help us to save our loved one, because there's no other option here. Because otherwise, we're going to be making funeral arrangements.
Right,
I won't
okay.
be blunt about it, but I've had that call. I had a call just 2 weeks ago. I found out a good friend of mine who had an adult child, 32 years of age. She was in treatment. Never called to discuss it with me. He put her in treatment for 30 days, which I would have told him was not nearly enough time. On day 31, she walked out. On day 32, she was dead. And I never know. He never called me. If he had called me, I would have said, listen, it's not long enough. She needs a year. And I tell families, this is a year-long journey with us.
Yeah.
Right? When I say us, I don't mean my law firm literally. I mean, it's a year-long journey to get somebody in recovery and keep them there long enough so they can finally experience the miracle of recovery for the rest of their life. Because
Yeah.
I want to get this right the first time. But it's like you, right? I mean, you're in remission, but it wouldn't take probably that much for it to come back. Because I know friends who've gone through cancer, and I just lost an aunt who had cancer. If you can get it in remission, if you don't keep it in remission, it comes back and it comes roaring back. So
Yep,
it's the
and
same the dynamics.
yep, and, as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about how I trusted that oncologist, and I needed to, like, I let go. You get to I mean, you know in your heart, so if you can be that for people who are going through something hard like this, and I like how you made this parallel to help me understand. the idea of it. I mean, I have someone that I want to call you right away to get some help. Um, because there is a point where you have to have someone you can trust, and when you trust them, you believe them. And by the way, I'm cured. I'm not even in remission. That's what they tell
Uh,
me. So I have to say that. Um, yeah, so anyway, I'm just looking at the time. I told you 25 minutes and we're at 40.
okay. I'm happy to chat with you.
And well, I'm so glad that we did. And Mark, I'm gonna have your information in my show notes. How can like people get a hold of you right away if they have someone, no matter where they are?
So what do
Who
you
would
want? Main phone number to the office, which I'll give you.
yeah,
Uh, it's 561-419-6095. That's the main number to the office. And the main website is mentalhealthaddictionlawfirm.com. That's mentalhealthaddictionlawfirm.com. Or if they just simply Google me, I'm all over social media.
yeah,
So every day, pretty much every day, I put out a video, and I make them on my phone. Sometimes I'd shoot them right after I get out of the gym. They're not scripted. It's just a thought I have, and I share real life, real world information for people so they can decide if they even want to pick up the phone and call us. So there's literally probably at this point thousands of hours of video content out there on just about every subject you could think of when it comes to behavioral health issues in Florida law and how we help people. And it's there for free. And really it's been a real mission of mine to give people the information they need, not the garbage they read on Google or
right,
some blog post that somebody who knows nothing about this stuff is talking about. Real world cases, real world information from somebody who's been doing this for a long time and spoken to thousands of families, and it's for free. You can have it all. Seriously, it's just
I mean,
there.
find the information,
I've
that's
got
free.
3 books which you can download on both of my websites. You can call my team and speak to Brittany or Nate, who are part of our intake department, and you can call them for free. So,
I do have a question. How
yes.
expensive does this get for families?
Okay, so there's the legal component, and I will tell you that actually out of all of this, that hiring us is probably the cheapest part of the process. But if you don't unless you can get your loved one to go voluntarily and stay voluntarily, and by the time you get to us, that's not happening. The legal component, which is the critical thing that gets things started, is the cheapest part of it. I would say average fees, I mean, legal fees, depending on the case, somewhere in the ten to $20,000 range, but we're typically on the case anywhere from 3 months to a year, and that may cover a good bulk of that. Good treatment, um, really good treatment, I would say is in the 50 to $30,000 a month range. It's not cheap, it isn't, which is why having health insurance is really, really important. Um, for the resources to pay for treatment. Now, there are county facilities, and I'm a big fan of them. The problem is they don't always have a bed available because
Uh,
everybody wants treatment and there's just only so many beds. Whereas if you have the ability to pay for treatment or insurance can cover it, it helps things. Now, I think the sad part of all of this is that we don't make treatment available for everybody. And I've been pretty vocal about that too. I think in this country, and I'm proud to say I've been a citizen now for about 10 years. I've lived in the US for 37 years. I just came back from the United Kingdom, my first trip back in 15 years to
uh,
say goodbye to a family member. But I think frankly, it's shameful that we don't make treatment available to everybody, and not just treatment, but world-class treatment, because we got the resources here. But
yeah.
I'm not going to get on a political soapbox here on your podcast, but the simple fact is that
We'll
you don't
talk offline, Mark.
health insurance, it's a problem. It's not an impossibility, but it doesn't help things.
Right.
And look, sometimes if you're a veteran, you have veterans insurance. I've got a really great contact that does nothing but place veterans. And Nate, my sales manager, he's a veteran. Lewis, who was one of my associates and a longtime friend, also a veteran. So we're passionate about helping veterans, and there are options for those folks. And I've got there's
Mhm.
resources you can have them for free. You only got to pay me if you hire me to do legal work, but resources I give them to you for free.
Right. I love that. I love that. Okay, listeners, if you need this, just go find your free resources. I always told everyone on Doing Divorce Different, get all the information you can. There's so much free information out there, and I have it on my website too. But get all the information you can. And then, Mark, I would totally call you if I needed help.
Thank you.
after talking to you. So I just feel like we're going to talk again. And I'm so glad to have made this connection. So thank you so much. Thank you for being here. It was just such a pleasure.
You're welcome.